call our meeting back to session. Ms. Vashani, would you read us out of closed, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Roanoke County School Board come out of closed session for the following: to discuss the acquisition of real property for a public purpose where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the school board pursuant to the real property exemption at 2.2-3711A3 of the Code of Virginia, and for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation, and consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia. I also move to certify that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the school board.
Second. Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Item 3.01, request to surplus items and vehicles. Mr. Todd Kegels.
We'll be presenting at the next meeting. Hope to have it on the consent agenda for the various items to be surplus. These items are either no longer operable or no longer needed by the school system. And just as a reminder, as they come into the warehouse, they will have already tried to redistribute all the items to other schools to ask if they're interested in any of that stuff. This is the stuff that nobody has any interest in, and we'll put it out for surplus sale, including all the items in the list there and one vehicle to be surplus to, a 94 van.
1994?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
It has a lot of miles on it, I saw.
Yeah. Replaced it with our first electric vehicle.
Okay.
All right, I'm good with
Move
that.
that to consent agenda for the next meeting.
I think that's,
That works for me.
sounds good. All right. 3.02, project updates.
I just have a couple. The first one, that's just a reminder kind of where we were on the Vinton bus lot at the start, and they have finished that now. Adams Construction did a great job for us at a great price, did a high-quality job, and did it on time, so thanks to them for that. But it's safe and ready to go for another 30 years. We also completed some HVAC replacements out at Herman L. Horn. I only gave updates on those two projects, just kind of the, where things fell sort of cyclically, but I wanted you to see some of the other stuff that we're working on. So we have actually 39 active projects right now, not including maintenance items. These are just things that we manage through operations. So there's lots of stuff going on there, lots of HVAC renovations, complete replacements out of Fort Lewis, for instance, W. Conduit, those sorts of things. But obviously the list is there, some light reading sometime if you want to go and look at it. And we did have one other item I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, and that is the track out at Cave Spring High School. It is in really rough shape. It was just brought to my attention this week. We went out there and checked it out, and it's a little over 10 years old. It's due for replacement. And just to remind you, they paid for that themselves to that installed. They had the first rubber track, and now it's time for it to be replaced. It's worn down to the pavement, and I'll bring pictures for the next meeting. But it is something we need to put on our radar for replacement. It's actually too late to do it this year anyway, before you have to do it when the temperature range is in a certain range, and it's already too late to do that. So the earliest we could do it would be next summer, but it is something financially we need to put on our radar. And it's probably, I've got some updated pricing coming, but it's probably in the $150,000 to $175,000 range.
And you're right, they raised the money to do that. They didn't cost the county anything.
That's right.
This would be the first time you had to spend it. What in the world? Anybody, that we spend anything on it.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of tracks, I know Northside had some repairs. Have we gotten to those yet?
We did. We just finished those last weekend. Everything's done over there except the 3 feet or so we had to cut out to get the drainage system through. We just have to paint the stripes back on, but the rubber's back in place, and we're just, like I said, we just have to paint those lines, and we're done.
Great.
One quick question about the humidity. Did Avis, have they been able to, the humidity at Cave Spring?
Avis is looking at the drainage piece. There's an area right outside the greenhouse over there where when it rains really hard, water backs up and then actually backs up into the building. You know, it has to do with some pipe sizing issues, it looks like. And since they were responsible for all of that, they actually agreed to go out and take a look at it for us, and we're still kind of waiting to hear from him. They went out and looked at it and are working with one of their subcontractors, but they haven't told us what they're going to do about it yet. The humidity is a separate issue, and we have an engineering firm that's already gone out and met and toured the building. We don't have the report back from them yet, but we are working on that.
Related to that, we commissioned that heating and air system, right? I've asked this
That was
question. I
before
can't-
my time, but I would assume so. I mean, we always do that, so.
So how can this happen? How can we have these issues with Cave Springs Heating and Air when we even paid to have them commissioned? That's what I don't understand. Can Avis answer that question? Or somebody there?
And I think the thing is that we need to find out is if everything is working correctly still. So we've had, and I don't give an exact number because I don't, you know, I'd be guessing if I said the exact number, but we've replaced a whole bunch of compressors out there in the last year and a half, as in like way more than we should be replacing on a system that new. And not everything's new. I mean, there was value engineering that took place there in terms of we didn't replace everything, just like they weren't replacing everything at Bird. So you're kind of mixing the old stuff with the new stuff, and I don't know if that's what the engineering firm's going to hopefully tell us.
But you did the flooring, and you still have to run those machines constantly in the gym, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, something's wrong.
Yeah, we installed 2 industrial-sized dehumidifiers in the ceiling out there this summer, and they run constantly, and we still get humidity alarms. Now, the alarms trigger at 50%, which, you know, you can go to 60%, it's not a problem, but they trigger at 50%. But with those running, we wouldn't even expect to hit 50, and we're still constantly triggering those even when it's not humid outside. So that's what we've hired the engineers to try to tell us what's going wrong. We thought the dehumidifiers were going to solve the problem, but they did keep the floor from buckling up. The floor did not buckle up this summer the way it did in the past, so it kept it low enough to do that, but it's not maintaining the levels we'd like to see.
It's not a very glowing recommendation.
Nope.
That it's, you know what I mean? I mean, we just spent $40-some million on that school. We had that system commissioned, and now we're back visiting the air and humidity and all that. It doesn't make sense. Somebody needs to answer for that. It just doesn't equate.
It sounds like we've got that study, and is it gonna tell us that maybe it wasn't installed? Or what we got?
No,
What we
I
should
think
have?
that would have been the commissioning piece. I think when it was commissioned, you know, that's where we get the report that says, yes, everything is installed the way it was designed to be installed, and it's functioning properly when it was handed over to us.
Do we
Now,
have
what's
any
it-
recourse on the commissioning folks?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I
And
think it's worth asking. I mean, this is
it may
ridiculous.
have been functioning, you know, the way it was supposed to be when it was handed over to us. The question is what's happened between the time it was handed over to us and now. Like I said, we've replaced compressor after compressor after compressor, and
We can try.
I'm just not sure.
sure.
I'm just not sure I'd waste my money on commissioning it if we can't get, if this is what we get. It's a waste of money.
Yep, we spent 43 million.
Do it. And I'm not
And where
blaming,
is
I know you weren't here, but I'm just saying.
Those are questions we can try to dig into and find out, at least, try to get an answer to.
The A&E work and all the engineering, you would think that somebody would design a system if that's what they do, so we wouldn't be
Not
having
have
these
all that.
problems.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Humidity.
Yeah, and the humidity may not be a result of the HVAC system. So we're kind of, in this conversation, assuming it's the HVAC system, but there's some thought that maybe there's water under the gym at Cave Spring High School that may, you know, really be the source of the humidity. So,
But that's
But when
still
we
showing.
renovated, shouldn't we have known
Yeah.
that this is,
well, you would think.
We'd
And-
take
and
care
you would
of
think
this.
water wouldn't back up into the building, you know, off of freshly poured concrete pads out there either, but it is.
As a
So-
result of everything we did, we put in a whole new drainage system out there because of the
That's right.
flooding and everything. So, I mean, none of
to
the.
take it around the building. All the runoff's going around the
side,
building.
None of those,
That's
and I
right.
don't mean to say they're
And it's the new
excuses,
stuff
but
that's
none of
backing
that
up.
holds water if, we hold,
No pun intended.
yeah. If we hold their feet to the fire, I mean,
Yeah.
somebody's got to be responsible. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I agree.
You're right.
And Avis is looking at that for us
Okay,
in terms of the
good.
drainage piece, so
All right,
we'll figure out the humidity.
bring it back for us before December.
Yeah.
All right. Is that all you have, Todd?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Item 3.03, request approval of the 2023 Literary Fund loan application and authorization resolution by the local governing body. Ms. Susan Peterson. Welcome, Ms. Peterson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you know, we are working diligently with the county to fund the three projects that are on the table, the new CTE Center, renovations at W. Cundiff, and the renovations at Glen Cove. One of their requests was to look into getting a literary loan. Typically in the past, GO bonds from DPSA have been the most popular way we have financed our school construction projects. However, the current interest rate for that's about 4.3%. Literary loans come in at a lower interest rate. The one before you is at a 3%. So it would be in the county's interest for all of our citizens to pay less interest if we can. We only got the application within the past couple of weeks. I think we were notified that it was out there September 21st. So this is the first time I've been able to really share with you guys. I've not had a chance to really get into the meat with the county administrators because there are a couple of things in here that kind of threw me a little bit because in the past, when we've applied for these, we've applied for projects as a total. And we're moving forward with this project for all three schools. We would have to apply for each school individually, and I wouldn't necessarily want to pick one over the other. And so I've actually completed applications for all three, which would total $75,000. I do not have approval from the county to do that. That is a discussion point that I will need to have with their administration. However, I would imagine that if we couldn't get $75,000 at the lower interest rate, they would probably take a look at our CIP and our funding stream between the 2 years and work with us if we could do that. One of the other things that made me a little concerned, and I reached out to VDOE on this, one of the questions, if you look at the first page, the first question says, have we advertised an invitation for bid for the project as described? I have no one here. However, you all know that we have received an unsolicited PPEA request, and we have put it out to an RFP to get competing bids on that. Proposals, yes. I did reach out to VDOE and ask them if that disqualified us because it appeared to me that this is written in such that you would have all your architecture done, your drawings done, and then you're just bidding for construction. And that is not the process that we're going to go through. So Mr. Dickey at VDOE said that they would receive the application. He instructed me to choose no for that answer and that they would have to get the OAG involved to look and see if what has happened thus far would disqualify us.
So we've never done this before that I've ever seen.
We have. It's been a very long time. I think I was looking at a lit loan from maybe 2008. Maybe.
None of
It's
us
been a
were here in
very long
2008. So
Right.
what is different about this than the bonding process that we normally do, other than the interest rates are lower? Is this
well-
different money from the state or,
Yeah, I think it's a different pot of money from the state.
and the Board of Supervisors? My concern, I just want to make sure nobody's pulling a fast one here.
Okay.
I just want to make sure this is just a normal process
is.
and just, okay.
It should be an opportunity. Now, what I'm
Yeah.
waiting for you to say is this is state government at its finest, because if we had
Take
already
forever.
put this out for bid, like we were doing design bid build process, I
You
mean, to me,
couldn't
this is like some kind of arbitrary regulation. We couldn't apply for this if it had already gone out to bid. Why? I have no idea. Doesn't make any
Okay.
sense to me,
Yeah.
but, so we're still not even sure if we're eligible or not. I mean, it's an opportunity to get a lower interest rate, but.
And they only open up for certain periods. Like they were open last year at this time, But it was too early to apply for a loan last year. We really hadn't even gone forward and known what our funding was gonna be. I mean, we only entered our MOU with the county back in April. And so to have applied a year ago would not have been
Couldn't do
really-
it anyway,
We couldn't
yeah.
have done it.
Okay.
So this is kind of in process, but I did need to go ahead and start the discussion with you on this and get it in front of the county because their deadline is November 16th. So hopefully I'll hear back from the county before the next board meeting so we can have final documents for you to approve and sign. And then they would, I'm guessing, take it to their board of supervisors on October 24th, and then November 15th. It's due on November 16th.
What we're asking the board to do, though, is to approve the resolution so we can apply for this, and if possible, just on consent for the next meeting. You do need to take action, right?
Not today.
But I mean, for
But at
the next meeting,
at
yeah.
the
So
next
you want to
meeting.
put it, is that a consent or is that action?
It can go on consent.
Okay, consent's fine with
Because I
me.
noticed somewhere on here that it
It has a vote, yeah.
you had to vote for each individual, and granted, I mean, if it's part of consent, I guess that's the case, but.
Does it matter that we have 25 on each elementary school rather than we know it's gonna be a little different?
That's the maximum.
I was just going for the maximum, and I just put the maximum
Okay,
amount from the MOU in there as well for the costs.
good. All right,
All right.
thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere, Susan. 3.04, preliminary June 30, 2023 year-end results.
All right, let me plug this in. All right. So in front of you, you've got a two-sided piece of paper. We'll start on the double column side that says year-end surplus and carryover. We'll start on the top left-hand side and go through the general fund and then touch base on the other funds. This is where we stand currently with the year-end closing. Our auditors are furiously asking for lots of information every day. So these numbers are subject to change because the audit is ongoing. My team is working really hard to get the annual comprehensive financial report prepared, and we will bring the full and final audit to you in November. But preliminarily, what we have in the first section are revenue surplus. We've got a revenue surplus of state revenues of $708,000. This is made up of about half of it's made up of sales tax, higher than what we expected. And keep in mind, sales tax and SOQ kind of are inverted, but the net of all of that was a little higher. The other part of that is a regional program that the Virginia Department of Education started a while back. It is a Students with Intensive Needs Supports program, so it is a regional special education program that we have in sight. And when we apply for that money, we actually take those students out of our ADM number, but we get a higher dollar amount by having them in the regional program. So that gave us a little more money. The federal revenues are higher, mainly due to Medicaid. We budgeted it at $440,000, and it came in a bit higher than what we budgeted. Medicaid is something that, again, the special education department, their psychologists and nurses do a really good job of applying for Medicaid revenues where we can, for the students that we can. It is hard to estimate what this is going to be. So we've gotten aggressive every year during the budget to try and get closer to the total amount, but that can swing. And then the other revenues are made up of mostly two things are driving this surplus. One is CSA. So this year we started a new program in order to try and, as you know, the Comprehensive Services Act, the costs to support that are really going through the roof. This is a cost that both the county and the schools jointly share. One way that we have worked with the county to try and reduce our costs are to reintroduce some of these students back into our population who are in private daycare or day treatment, because private day treatment can be quite substantially expensive. So what this is, where we have brought in a couple of students and we hire an IA to help transition that student back into the regular population. Probably about 50,000 of that was revenue CSA paid us to, and it really supported the cost of the IAs that were performing that service. And the other amount is interest. Interest rates are coming back, and we stopped budgeting interest because it tanked so bad. And we just said that was going to be cream on the crop. So we really reduced our interest revenue budget. So that's what that is. So just under $1 million of revenue surplus is what we're looking at for the fiscal year end. The next line on there is our personnel savings. We have 1.17 million of personnel savings. What this is, it's going to be personnel lapse. It's going to be where employees left us during the year. We hired other employees. It may be a lower pay rate. So maybe we had open positions all year long. So that is our personnel lapse in the general fund. 0.188% of our personnel budget is kind of tight for where that number is. I prefer to see it more at the 2% range. I will say last year it was 0.86%. So we've gotten a smidge better, but what this means is basically we are very aggressive in our budgeting, and we're kind of budgeting that payroll lapse away to ensure that we are doing the best by our employees. On the flip side, what that means is if we ended up having to, in a given year, add a teacher or add a class or add, if we had some additional students with special needs come in and we had to put one-on-one aides on them, and these are mandates that we have to comply with, that's where that pot of money is going to come from. So it can go away pretty quickly. So that's why we like to have a higher cushion at the end of the year. So then the next section we'll get to is our departmental savings. Every department has a little bit of cushion left. Overall, the department savings is $188,408. This is closer to break even than last year. Last year we had over $500,000 throughout all of the different departments. Mr. Cagle is over here. He's just using way too much electricity, and so they pretty much blew the entire budget with our utilities this year. In fact, I had a savings of approximately $200,000 for flood insurance because it came in, for whatever reason, the rate projectors who cost that out brought the rates down significantly. And where we were tacking on 25% every year, and they were charging us an extra 25%, and that compounds pretty quickly over a couple of years. This year, they really brought it way back down, so we had a savings. So with Dr. Nice's permission, I even moved some of that over to cover part of the utilities costs. But even with that, he went low. I will say that they are seeing similar trends this year, and although we did provide them some additional budget in the current 2024 year, I think there is a concern of the utilities still coming in over budget in the current year. So at the end of the year, not including the emergency contingency carryover, we've got $2.3 million to be allocated out. We, per our year-end capital policy, $195,458.99 will be withheld in the general fund to pay off purchase orders that were created before year end, and items just didn't come in. It could be where we ordered something and it just wasn't delivered or received. We ended up having 13 purchase orders that make up that number. And then the remaining amount Per our policy, 50% goes to major capital, and then the remaining can go to minor capital, fleet, technology, or CSA, or emergency security needs. So we'll just stick that into minor capital, that's kind of our.
So that 20,000 will get funded for the basketball goals.
Just barely.
Yeah, that's what I was just wanted to make sure we had that.
Yes, we'll get that covered for you.
Yep, thank you. Now everybody can beat me up over asking about basketball goals again.
And then we have that we did not use our emergency carryover contingency, so that will be carried over to be available for 24 as well. So in total, our carryover for the general fund is $4.3 million. The next section right below that is the grant fund carryover. And the grant fund's a little bit different because instead of this representing like surpluses, this represents the budgets of the grants that have been awarded to us. Most of our budgets are multi-year budgets, and so this 9.1 million represents, the pandemic, the ARPA, the SLF, CRF, all of those pandemic grants, the IDEA grants, the Title I grants, where we have another year left to spend those down. So that is in those numbers as well.
Did you say Ursa Hunts?
ESSER,
Yeah, Esther.
yeah, we still have a little bit of that.
Okay.
But we are getting those spent down. I know other localities are having a hard time getting those spent down, but we are definitely we've met all of our spending deadlines so far for our pandemic money, and next September will be our final amount that we will have spent down. So next year, we will be done.
Good.
Yes. Moving up to the top right-hand side, we've got the minor capital project fund. And I kind of grouped this so you can understand what all is sitting in that fund, because, almost $2.5 million is a lot of money. We've got 34,812 sitting in unallocated special projects. I use those terms because with the change in how our ordinance is adopted to use reserves or to use contingency is confusing. And so this is the amount of money that's sitting in minor capital, not allocated to projects. So we call them special projects because they're going to be special when they get allocated out. Mr. Kagos has 1.2 million sitting in minor capital projects that are ongoing in process at year end. And he shared there is 39 projects that are ongoing right now. So that part of those funds are sitting in that. He has $27,086 sitting in unallocated CMP reserves. This is the capital maintenance reserve, where projects that have been used have come in under budget, and so this is kind of what's been put back to be reallocated by him as needed. The CMP projects that are in process is $316,631. We still have a little bit of playground replacements going on, as you saw on the list he presented earlier. $325,089.47 left in that. The next three items are our turf replacements. I will remind you that we put $25,000 per each field, and the county matches that and gives us $25,000 per each field. And so this is money that we set aside, and it will solely only be used to replace the turf.
And they will continue to match.
Yes, they will.
They give that on all three?
They do, $25,000 per each, 75
You got
both sides of the pond.
1,500 already.
Yeah, we'll have to do that too. And then music uniforms, although not capital in nature, band uniforms can be quite costly, and choir uniforms are not. The secondary instruction team has a plan whereby they rotate through the division, and they rotate between band and choir. So they'll hit every school and for band uniforms, and every school for choir. 1 year they'll buy choir, they'll have a lot of funds left over, and then they'll apply whatever's left over to the band uniforms for the following year, for the following school.
That rotates each to the 5 schools.
It sure does. They have a rotating schedule. This is also something that I have shared with Dr. Stegall with athletics, and something we may want to discuss in helping our athletic programs. Vending grants, we've got $68,956 left in these vending grants. This is where, once upon a time, Pepsi would give us $50,000 every year as a donation, and we would allocate it and give it to every school. And then they would submit a request to use it for certain projects. Several years back, this fell out of the contract, and I don't think any of the vending companies, Pepsi, Coke, any of them, they don't do it anymore. So that's just a declining pot that as soon as all the schools finish their funds allocated to them, it'll just go away. So in total, it's just under 2.5 million. I will say, because I know you're most interested in, can you see my mouse? In this special projects number, when you take the 34 and you add the million down here, that's going to give you, I wrote it down, $1,105,525 in your special projects. So when we come and ask to use minor capital reserves, that will be the number that I will quote to you.
What was that? 1.5?
1.05.
1.05?
1.15.
1.15?
Hey, while we're on this, Todd, I get this question a lot, and I know I've talked to you about it, and I know why we're in the situation we're in with the air conditioning at Glenver Middle and the auxiliary gym. Do other middle schools have air conditioning in the auxiliary gym? Do you guys know?
Not at Bird Middle.
Yeah, we don't have
Gym
one.
is not air conditioned.
There's no auxiliary gym at Hidden Valley.
In the middle?
We only got it in Glenver and Bird a couple of years ago. It wasn't, or was it Glen, or Bird and Northside Middle? Because they didn't, it was either North. or-
So it's not Glenver. We don't have it in the auxiliary gym, and then they play volleyball and a lot of
But in
different
the
things in
middle,
there.
well, we do too, but in they only got it, we asked for it like 4 or 5 years ago in 2 of the high, or not, middle schools, right? Where because we got our middle school, I know Bird got the air,
I thought so.
Todd, you were there. I can't remember
Oh, you
the
did
other
get it,
school.
okay.
I think it was either Glenver or Northside Middle.
Oh, just the main gym the main gym doesn't
That's
have
right, the
AC.
main gym we didn't have.
Not the
right.
auxiliary.
But I'm saying, we only got it a few years ago at 2 of the middle schools.
Right, I
The
think
other
all
middle
them.
schools had it, of course, Northside has it, the big gym, they've got the huge gym. And then, Cave Middle, that we just did 30 million on that, so I'm sure they got air in their middle school gymnasium. And Hidden Valley Middle, I'm not sure about. It may have been 3 schools, it may have been
Hidden Valley Middle got it in the main gym, but then it doesn't have an
in
auxiliary
the
gym.
middle,
Yeah,
okay.
but it doesn't have an
So
auxiliary
then
gym.
that
We
leaves
have one gym.
Bird, Glenver, and North, well, Bird and Glenver, I guess, were the 2 schools
Do
that
you,
finally got it in the middle school.
I don't remember how much that was. I know that it was supposed to be coming out of ESSER funds, right? And then,
$500,000 or something.
was it, and then it didn't get done in time, which was no fault of yours, but obviously, but.
Right, and that was just the cost, when the cost came back, so originally they had in the ESSER funds list to do both of those gyms, but when the cost came back, the price just for the main gym, used up almost all of what they had set aside for the main and the auxiliary. It was just a function of the cost of the project.
Yeah, something to keep in mind. Thank you. Sorry, Susan.
No? Perfect. Moving into the major capital fund, we've got 1.4 million of unallocated money sitting in reserves right now. I will bring your attention down to the bottom corner, right down here. If you add that and the amount we're gonna give back to minor capital, the total is gonna be 2.4753180. So this is gonna be the total that's gonna be in my major capital reserves, if you will, special projects to be allocated. Our CIP has 2 million of cash in 2024 going into the CTE project. And so that's going to be the first off the bat we'll go to. And it is my recommendation that we take the remaining 471, 531.80 and split it in half and put it into the Glen Cove and the W. Cundiff projects as well. So we would not have any reserves in major capital.
Any unallocated, you mean?
Yeah.
That's what we had talked about doing from the beginning, right?
That's what I had in my mind always.
Right.
I can't remember if I said it to you
mentioning that.
guys.
Okay, that's no surprise.
Yeah. And then just as an aside, if we didn't allocate it to a special project, that would be a reserve that the Board of Supervisors would expect us to put in contingency and then have to go to them to ask to use it. So I think it's just easier when we know we have these projects on CIP to use them for, to go ahead and put them in these projects.
That works for me.
Yeah, it's okay with me.
Okay, so currently, when we fund these big projects, just to remind you, the major and minor capital represents the cash that we have in the projects. And so we start to fund part of these large projects through the major and minor funds, and we also fund them through the bond fund. So just keep in mind, when you're looking through here, when you see like building renovation at William Byrd High, you're gonna have a piece in the, where did I go? Sorry. I'm getting happy with my little mouse here. You're gonna have a piece up here and then a piece down here. And so neither one of these are gonna be the total project cost, it's just which pot is that project cost sitting in. So we spend down bond money first. William Byrd is a bond that we've already issued. This has actually been spent in July, and we'll receive the money in that, and their bond money will be done, and we'll just be using major capital money for the rest of the project for William Byrd High. And then you can see, I won't read through all the monies, but you can see how much we have sitting in major capital for the 3 projects. We also have a little bit left with the Northside High football turf, the gym, the William Byrd High HVAC replacements. And then I've got a little bit sitting down here that we set aside several years ago. We're in the process with the county of converting the human resources system and the payroll system, and this amount is set aside for if we need it for the payroll system, which is coming down the pipe.
And these numbers represent where we were at year end, not where we are now, because the
Correct.
Northside High money's all.
Correct. This is year-end carryover. And so what will happen is the numbers that you see here will be flowed into the project for FY '24, and you will be zeroed out.
Because we've already spent the rest of the turf money.
Correct. And then the bond money, so this is what's been spent and will be received in the bond fund. And then these two, the 760 and the 800, those are really just budget numbers at this point, where we were allocated in a prior year. We get a certain amount of bond money every 2 years. So that is an amount that we have not allocated to a project that we've set aside to use in this project going forward. And then down at the bottom, trying to make this big, I know it's hard to read. We have all of our other funds. I don't know that you necessarily need me to go through, but these are the other funds that keep their fund balance, and we just carry them over from year to year, and the county has agreed to that. And so in total, we've got 48.8 million almost of carryover funds for next year. Now, the next page.
One question about the nutrition fund.
Yes, sir.
Did that, they're self-funding, right?
Correct.
So you got 7.5 million carryover.
Correct. That is too much.
Yeah.
They actually had, their revenue only went up, if I remember right, around 150,000 for fiscal year '23. They have a plan with VDOE to spend down from the '22 year, because most of that's carryover from '22. And when Ms. Estrada came in, she started buying a lot of stuff. So she's working and trying to replace a lot of equipment. We have a lot of ovens and fridges and refrigerators and freezers, stoves that need to be replaced. And so she's going through methodically, taking care of providing better equipment, newer equipment that doesn't break down for our.
And we're still doing free lunches for certain students.
Yes, we still have our Title I schools are still on the CEP program, so they all eat free. And then we added in the current year Northside to that program.
Thank you.
So when we ask for our ordinance, if you'll notice, the number that I quoted in the prior page is the total in the first column of this report. So you'll see we've got the breakdown for the general fund, and then all of the other funds comes to the just under 48.8 million. The next column shows that we have to back out all of the money that we purposefully used when we created our original budget for fiscal year 2024, because we planned on using year-end balance. And so to have a balanced budget for 24, we plopped in a beginning balance. This is a budgeting technique that we have been using for many years, like the fleet replacement plan. This is part of the whole smoothing of the transfer that we put into these extra funds. For example, just talking about the fleet replacement, we try and build up our transfer so that we don't have 6 million going in 1 year and 1 million going in the next year. We would never be able to fund the 6 million, so we slowly build up to a level and we keep it there, so that in the year that we need to purchase a lot of buses, we have the money and we can use fund balance. And that's what that column represents, is our purposeful use of fund balance in those years where we have to make more purchases. And then the next column shows the amount that is coming from the general fund into your major and minor funds. And so the total appropriation we would request of the County Board of Supervisors is 48.1 million. Rolling this out into the categories, these are the categories that we will have, the funds will go into for their legal purposes. The only thing that is added that was not used in the original budget is that contingency reserves is the 2 million. And so if we wanted to use the $2 million, if we, that's set aside for not meeting revenue or having a one-time unexpected catastrophe. So if we needed that, we would go to the Board of Supervisors, which we would do anyway, to use those funds, move it to the appropriate place. So there you go. That's your end. That's June
Thank you.
30th.
Any questions? Thank you, Susan. Everybody for being here.
You adjourned?